Hello all. In this video, we will be going over the ACFL proficiency rating scale and talk about the four major levels. In fact, there are four major levels, but we're going to focus most on three of those four major levels. Here is the ACFL rating scale image of the pyramid, correct? And the four major divisions in terms of proficiency are novice, that we can see here, intermediate, advanced, and superior. The three major proficiency scale ratings that we will concentrate on are novice, intermediate, and advanced. We will not talk about superior at this time. So why don't we go ahead and start with how we assess those or place the students in the four major proficiency levels. And there are four major assessment criteria used. We're going to just kind of gloss over these. We're going to focus most on one of the areas, but let's look at what the four assessment criteria are. So we have global tasks and functions, which means what speakers are able to do in the language. And we will most focus on global tasks and functions when we're talking about the major levels of proficiency. The second one criteria that is used is context and content, or in other words, the settings in which the speaker can function or the topics that they're able to discuss. We also use accuracy and comprehensibility, which means how well a speaker is understood when they're talking. And finally, text type, which can mean from words and phrases to sentences or simple sentences or connected sentences to paragraphs and connected paragraphs, right? As you go on, but mostly to paragraphs. That's where we're going to start our level. So what we're going to look at right now, what a speaker can do at each major level of the proficiency scale. And we are going to focus most on the functions and global tasks of each major level. In other words, what can a speaker do at that particular major level? The first level we're going to touch on is our novice level. Novice speakers can communicate minimally with formulaic, that means memorized phrases, memorize words. They usually can do lists of familiar topics and phrases, but they can only communicate minimally at that particular level. And they're mostly memorized phrases and words at this level. A solid novice. Now let's talk about what a solid intermediate looks like. We're talking the major level defined, right? An intermediate can create with language here. So they've thrown away the memorized phrases, right? And now they're putting together what they already know and creating with language. They can also ask and answer simple questions. So they can pretty much handle a conversation. As long as it's within familiar range on familiar topics, and they can usually handle a simple situation or a transactional situation, like at the market or buying something at a restaurant, a simple situation in which they would have to ask or answer simple questions on familiar topics that they know. But they are definitely creating with the language that they have acquired. They are no longer parroting or using memorized phrases or words. Something to note is that an intermediate can handle what a novice can do, and then they can also do what the intermediate level can do. So they build on each other, right? Advanced, finally, can narrate and describe in all major time frames. And so usually major time frames are present, past, and future. Depends on your language though, but that's usually the major time frames in a language. They can narrate, that means they can tell a detailed story from beginning, middle to end about something that happened or a story that happened. So the narration is key. And they can describe. And when describing, we don't mean that they can just say what color it is, but they can paint a picture so that you know exactly what the object or what the situation was that they are describing or are describing in time. So you come away with a very solid image of whatever they describe uh, in your head. And they can do this in all major time frames. They can narrate in the past, they can narrate in the future, they can describe in present. They can do this in all major time frames, and they can handle a situation with a complication. So if they were in a conversation or there was some type of situation where they had a flat tire, they would be able to handle that situation, call AAA or whatever they needed to be able to fix the tire, get the tire fixed. They may not be able to have the specific vocabulary necessary for fixing a tire, but they will know how to paraphrase so that they can handle that particular problem or complication that is in their situation. And they can also handle anything at intermediate level, and they can of course handle anything at novice level. So those are the ones that we will most deal with. We will not go into superior at this time, even though you can see it in the picture there. So I wanted to leave you with this image before we do a little quiz on the four major levels, or the three major levels defined. A novice, the image that you can get is obviously someone who can parrot. In other words, someone who can mimic what you say or reiterate what you say in a conversation, or use memorized phrases. But also, if you have the image here of a tourist asking for a taxi, right? A novice can memorize enough phrases that they would be able to ask the taxi driver to go to a certain part, but they may not understand, a conversation with the taxi driver about everything that was going on at the time, but they know enough that they can say the phrase to get to where they need to go. Intermediate level is a picture of someone at a market. So definitely a simple, familiar situation. They can ask and answer questions to get what they need at the market, possibly even barter for the price that they want, but be able to ask and answer questions to be able to get what they need in a market. Advanced is definitely characterized by the call center worker, or even what they call, and intermediate, of course, is seen as a survivor, because they can do simple, familiar situations in which they can survive in that situation, like going to a market or a supermarket and getting what they need, and asking, or a restaurant where they can ask and answer questions to be able to get what they need. And an advanced learner is definitely a reporter, because they can narrate and describe, right? We gave the image of the call center person because besides being able to have a conversation with someone who calls in and understand and maybe say back, narrate and describe what's going on, they're able to handle a complication, right? And solve that complication. So they'll have a conversation with someone at the call center, and they'll be able to fix the problem of whoever is calling, whatever situation they had, find out what the problem is, and then be able to fix it. We also think of advanced as a reporter because of their capability of describing and narrating such that they paint a picture that you can understand. And then finally, we won't hit superior. So let's take a little quiz, see if you can pinpoint what are the major descriptors of those major levels. See if you can get it. So you're going to indicate which global tasks and functions are at the novice level. So you choose, of those global tasks and functions presented, which are the ones at the novice level, and you're going to answer now in your Edpuzzle. Obviously, we know that at novice level, they can communicate minimally with isolated words and phrases. They can produce lists, and they can produce memorized language. These are the global tasks and functions of a novice speaker. let's look at the global tasks and functions at the intermediate level. What can they do with the language, right? So you're going to answer that now in your Edpuzzle, and we'll see if you're correct. Intermediate level can create with language, major marker for the intermediate, right? They can maintain a simple conversation. They can ask and answer simple questions, right? And they can handle a simple survival situation, such as going to the supermarket and asking enough questions and answering questions to be able to get what they need. And then finally, what are the global tasks and functions at the advanced level? What can they do in the language? Go ahead and answer on your Edpuzzle. What are those major markers? See if you're correct. And they can describe, obviously. They can narrate in future, in past, and usually you're describing in the present with enough detail that they can paint a picture that you go away with knowing exactly what's going on and exactly what they're talking about. And they can handle a situation with a complication. If there was a problem, they would be able to solve it. And again, like I said, they are not perfect at any key terminology, but they are good paraphrasers, and therefore they can handle those situations with a complication and get what they need or solve the problem by paraphrasing. And that is the end of this presentation. I hope you have a better understanding of the major markers of proficiency level of ACFA.